What if the painful relationships you've been through weren't just random? What if the heartbreak, the manipulation, the confusion all had a purpose you couldn't see in the moment? You didn't just stumble into a narcissist's life by accident. You were allowed to experience it for a reason. And if you don't stop and seek clarity, you'll repeat the cycle again and again, calling it love, calling it friendship, calling it God testing you, but never really understanding what God is trying to teach you through it. This message isn't just about healing from narcissistic abuse. It's about discovering divine insight in your pain. If you've ever asked, "Why me?" or "Why does this keep happening?" stay until the end, because the answer you've been praying for might not be comfort, but clarity. There are moments in life when the people you trust the most become the very ones who hurt you the deepest. Narcissistic relationships aren't just emotionally exhausting. They are spiritual assignments meant to teach you something critical about your identity, your boundaries, and your value. Sometimes God allows you to encounter certain personalities, not to destroy you, but to expose what's still broken inside you. Your need for approval, your fear of rejection, your habit of overgiving. You're not being punished, you're being refined. A narcissistic person thrives on control, confusion, and charm. They come as light but drain your soul like darkness. The reason it hurts so much is because you gave from a pure place and it wasn't received with honor. But that doesn't mean your love was wasted. It means your discernment is being sharpened. You're not called to be everyone's savior. You're called to walk in purpose. And purpose cannot flow freely where manipulation thrives. God doesn't want you to remain in cycles that dim your light. He wants you to break free, grow strong, and walk boldly in truth. Every toxic relationship is an invitation to grow in wisdom, to stop blaming yourself, to stop doubting your gut, to stop justifying someone else's behavior as just how they are. You were made for peace, not confusion. Love, not emotional warfare. Truth, not gaslighting. So why did God allow it? Because your future needed a stronger version of you, one who is no longer naive, no longer chasing validation, no longer accepting crumbs. He allowed it so you would learn how to protect your purpose, guard your heart, and choose people by discernment, not desperation. Healing doesn't mean revenge. It means recognizing the lesson, releasing the pain, and never again lowering your standards for someone who cannot meet them. You are not here to fix broken people who refuse to change. You're here to walk in the fullness of who you were created to be. Some people enter your life not as blessings, but as revelations. Their presence is uncomfortable, sometimes even damaging, but their purpose is transformational. The narcissist you encountered wasn't a random detour. It was part of a divine setup designed to wake you up, stretch you, and prepare you for something greater. It may not feel spiritual because it was painful. It may not feel purposeful because it left scars, but it served a role in your becoming that comfort never could. When you met that person, you may have thought it was love, friendship, or even destiny. You gave from a genuine place, poured out energy, time, loyalty, and heart. And in return, you were manipulated, dismissed, or devalued. At first, it felt like betrayal, and it was. But deeper than that, it was a mirror. A mirror showing you parts of yourself that were unhealed, places where you still sought approval, where you lacked boundaries, where you ignored your inner voice for the sake of connection. God doesn't always teach us through peaceful lessons. Sometimes the greatest revelations come through the deepest heartbreaks, Not because he enjoys your pain, but because he knows your potential. The person who entered your life and drained your spirit was a tool, not a punishment. That experience wasn't meant to define you, but to refine you. It was allowed so that you could finally confront what you've been avoiding: your worth, your voice, your strength. If you hadn't met them, you might still be lowering your standards. You might still be calling chaos normal. You might still be settling for attention instead of waiting for real love. That narcissistic relationship was like a divine alarm clock. It forced you to wake up, to question, to examine your patterns, to understand what love is. Nothing in your life is wasted, not even the pain, especially not the pain. The wounds may still be healing, but your spirit is already wiser. The lesson wasn't just about them, it was about you. About trusting your intuition, about learning that love without respect is manipulation, about realizing that you deserve consistency, honesty, and peace, not confusion dressed in charm. You didn't attract a narcissist because you were weak. You attracted that experience because it was time for you to grow. And now, you're not who you were. You see clearer. You speak firmer. You choose differently. What came to shake you actually shaped you. So instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, what did this reveal about me? Because that is where your power is. That is where your transformation begins. And that is why this wasn't just a mistake. It was a setup, a holy disruption meant to redirect you toward the version of yourself that God always intended you to become. There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't just break your heart. It exposes what was already fragile inside of you. Narcissistic abuse isn't just about what they did to you, it's about what it revealed in you. It uncovers wounds you didn't know were there, fears you've buried, and insecurities you've tried to silence. The chaos they brought wasn't new. It only triggered parts of you that had been quietly hurting long before they arrived. Many people wonder why they stayed so long, why they tolerated so much, why they kept believing promises that were never kept. The answer often lies beneath the surface, in the parts of your identity that were underdeveloped, in the childhood wounds that were never fully healed, in the places where your need to be loved outweighed your ability to protect yourself. Narcissistic relationships have a way of making you confront what you've ignored. You might realize that you're deeply afraid of being alone, that you equate love with sacrifice, that you confuse being needed with being valued. You might notice that you always say yes when you really want to say no, or that you over-explain, over-apologize, over-function just to be enough for someone who will never be satisfied. These behaviors don't come out of nowhere. They're survival patterns that stem from unhealed pain. And here's the beauty in that exposure. What you see, you can heal. What you confront, you can change. The narcissist didn't create the brokenness in you, they expose it. And that exposure is actually a gift in disguise. It shows you the exact areas God is ready to transform. It reveals the cracks where His truth needs to seep in, not to shame you, but to set you free. You begin to see that your identity was too attached to external validation, that your boundaries were too flexible, that your peace was too dependent on someone else's mood. This isn't a condemnation, it's a calling back to wholeness, a calling to remember who you were before trauma shaped your self-worth, a calling to rebuild from the inside out. Healing from narcissistic abuse isn't just about avoiding toxic people in the future. It's about strengthening the parts of you that allowed toxicity to stay. It's not about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming wise and whole. It's about loving yourself so deeply that anything less than mutual respect becomes instantly recognizable and instantly unacceptable. So instead of seeing that relationship as a setback, see it as a spotlight. It lit up the places where your soul needed attention. It revealed the roots of patterns you were finally ready to break. And now that you've seen what's been hiding beneath the surface, you're not powerless anymore. You're aware. And awareness is the beginning of healing. It's the moment everything starts to change. Painful relationships often leave us questioning ourselves. How did I let it get this far? Why didn't I walk away sooner? Why did I allow this person to treat me that way? The truth is, sometimes God allows certain people into our lives not to harm us, but to reveal the invisible cracks in our emotional walls. Narcissistic individuals, with their manipulation, entitlement, and disregard for limits, serve as mirrors. They reflect back to us what we've never learned to protect: our personal boundaries. You may have thought kindness meant saying yes to everything. You may have confused self-sacrifice with love. You might have grown up in an environment where keeping the peace was more important than protecting your peace. And when someone came into your life who pushed every limit, crossed every line, and tested your patience to the breaking point, you didn't know how to respond, not because you were weak, but because you were unaware of your right to say no. Boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are gates that guard your well-being. And sometimes it takes someone violating those gates for you to even realize how unguarded you've been. That person wasn't sent to destroy you. They were allowed to reveal what needs strengthening within you. Their disrespect taught you how much you've been neglecting your own voice, your own standards, and your own self-worth. God uses pain with purpose. He doesn't waste experiences. When your boundaries were violated, it wasn't to leave you broken. It was to bring you into awareness. You were forced to learn how to speak up. You were pushed to set limits where you once only gave chances. You were challenged to value your peace more than your desire to be liked. It's easy to say someone mistreated you. It's harder, but more powerful, to ask why you allowed it. That's where your healing begins. Not in blame, but in ownership. Because once you realize you have the authority to set the standard for how people treat you, your life begins to change. You stop attracting those who take advantage of your silence. You stop tolerating emotional chaos in the name of love. You stop overgiving just to prove your worth. You learn that boundaries are not selfish, they're sacred. They honor the divine within you. And when you start honoring yourself, the wrong people fall away and the right ones rise to meet you with mutual respect. The narcissist was not your teacher, the experience was. And now you are wiser, you are stronger. You understand that love without boundaries is not love at all, it's bondage. So if you're looking back wondering why it had to happen, remember this: it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. To wake you up, to raise your standards, and to teach you that protecting your peace is not a luxury, it's a spiritual responsibility. Not every relationship in your life is meant to last forever. Some were never meant to fulfill you, they were designed to form you. That painful, confusing connection that left you questioning your worth wasn't random. It was a divine test, a lesson, a preparation for something far greater than you could see at the time. Often, before God elevates you, He allows you to walk through relationships that strip away the parts of you that aren't ready for where you're going. When you're called to a greater purpose, you can't carry fragile self-worth. You can't be easily manipulated by flattery or guilt. You can't rely on other people's approval to feel valuable. So you face the fire of a relationship that challenges all those weak points. The narcissist wasn't just a problem, they were a mirror. They revealed where you still needed growth, where you needed clarity, where your faith needed depth. In seasons of preparation, God doesn't just open doors, He closes them too. He removes people who block your vision, who cloud your judgment, or who drain your energy. But before He removes them, sometimes He lets them run their course so you can learn the lesson for yourself. It's in those moments of heartbreak, betrayal, or emotional confusion that you begin to ask the deeper questions. Why was I attracted to this person? What did I ignore in myself to stay close to them? What values did I compromise just to keep their love? Those questions are not signs of failure, they are signs of maturity. They mark the beginning of your transformation. Because once you recognize a divine test, you stop playing the victim. You stop obsessing over their lies and start focusing on your truth. You stop begging for closure and start receiving clarity. You start rebuilding from a place of divine alignment, not emotional desperation. God's plan for your life always includes pruning. And pruning is painful, but it produces strength. The pain of that relationship carved out space in you. Space for discernment, space for stronger boundaries, space for higher self-worth. That person was a chapter, not the whole story. They were a test, not the promise. And passing that test means you no longer settle for counterfeit versions of love. You were being prepared for relationships that honor your soul, not manipulate your emotions, for partnerships rooted in purpose, not control. For connections that reflect God's love, not distort it. But to receive that, you had to first learn what love is not. That relationship wasn't just heartbreak. It was holy preparation. And now you're stronger, wiser, and ready for what's next, not because you avoided the storm, but because you endured it and found yourself in the process. One of the deepest emotional traps we fall into is seeking validation from those who are incapable of giving it. And often it takes a painful relationship with a narcissistic person to finally wake us up to that truth. You may have bent over backward trying to earn approval. You may have stayed longer than you should have, hoping that if you just loved them enough, sacrificed enough, or proved yourself enough, they would finally see your worth. But they didn't. And that disappointment didn't mean you weren't valuable. It meant you were trying to harvest fruit from a barren tree. Narcissistic individuals are masters at withholding validation. They give just enough attention to keep you attached, but never enough to make you feel secure. They exploit your need for affirmation. They know how to dangle approval like a carrot, always just out of reach. And every time you chase it, you lose more of yourself. But here's the truth. God never intended for you to beg for what He already placed within you. Your worth is not something to be negotiated with people who are too broken to recognize it. Sometimes, God allows these emotionally draining relationships to expose the holes in your self-worth. Not to shame you, but to heal you. He wants you to see how often you've tied your value to how others treat you. He wants you to confront the part of yourself that still believes love must be earned rather than received freely. Narcissistic relationships become painful teachers in that process, because the longer you seek validation from someone incapable of love, the more you realize you've been disconnected from your source of identity. That source is not people. It is not their praise, their attention, or their acceptance. It is God. And when you finally stop looking horizontally for what only He can give vertically, everything begins to shift. You stop tolerating emotional crumbs. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's distorted version of love. You stop waiting for broken people to validate what heaven already declared over your life. Freedom begins when you release the lie that someone else has to choose you in order for you to feel chosen. You are already chosen. You are already loved. You are already called. And sometimes it takes the absence of affirmation from a narcissist to push you into the presence of God, where your identity is no longer based on performance, but on purpose. So yes, that relationship hurt, but it also exposed what needed to be healed. It forced you to confront the unhealthy patterns of needing to be needed. It made you realize that your worth cannot be found in the eyes of those who only love themselves. And now you're no longer seeking validation, you're standing in it. You're walking in it. Because you finally understand that being seen by God is worth far more than being approved by the wrong people. When you've been entangled in a narcissistic relationship, it does more than just hurt. It distorts your view of yourself. It leaves emotional fingerprints on your identity, convincing you that you are unworthy, invisible, or only valuable when you're serving someone else's ego. Over time, you begin to disconnect from who you truly are. You shrink, silence your voice, question your instincts, and confuse love with control or survival. But the pain, as deep as it is, holds a hidden invitation to come back home to your divine identity. Healing is the process of reclaiming what the relationship tried to erase. It's not just about moving on from the narcissist. It's about restoring the truth about who you were before the manipulation, before the gaslighting, before the emotional games. When you start that healing journey, you begin to untangle your worth from their approval. You begin to hear your own voice again. And more importantly, God's voice reminding you that you were never meant to live in confusion, fear, or emotional dependency. God never created you to be someone's emotional prisoner. You were created in His image not to be controlled, but to live in clarity, purpose, and peace. And so, part of healing is realigning yourself with heaven's view of you. That means rejecting the lies that were spoken over you in the relationship, the lies that said you were too much, not enough, unlovable, or replaceable. Healing helps you see that none of those things were true. They were projections of a person who never saw themselves clearly, let alone you. The beauty of this process is that as you detach from the person who broke you, you reattach to the one who made you. You begin to walk differently, think differently, love differently. Not from a place of desperation, but from a place of wholeness. That's when confidence returns. That's when your spirit becomes steady. That's when you stop chasing people and start walking in purpose. Healing reconnects you with your calling. It wakes you up to the fact that your life has meaning beyond that painful chapter. You were never meant to stay stuck in someone else's dysfunction. You were meant to rise, reflect, and lead others out of the same darkness you once endured. The pain gave you depth. The healing gave you direction. And through it all, God never left. Even in your lowest moments, when your identity felt shattered and your worth seemed invisible, He was there, whispering truth, extending grace, waiting for you to return to who He created you to be. So as you heal, let that truth anchor you. This was never just about what happened to you. It's about what is being restored in you. And the person you're becoming on the other side is stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your divine identity than ever before. Painful relationships, especially those with narcissistic individuals, often feel like trials designed to break you. The constant manipulation, emotional exhaustion, and betrayal chip away at your peace and leave you questioning your faith and purpose. But beyond the surface, these difficult experiences are not random misfortunes. They are part of a divine process meant to refine your character and deepen your trust in God. Just as precious metals are purified through fire, your soul is being strengthened and purified through the heat of relational pain. When you face someone who twists your reality, demands unreasonable control, or undermines your self-worth, you are forced to confront your own inner weaknesses. These moments expose areas where you may still rely too heavily on people for your identity, or allow fear to dictate your decisions. They highlight where you need to develop resilience, boundaries, and courage. It's a refining fire, sometimes painful, but ultimately purifying. Through this process, God is shaping you into someone who can stand strong in adversity, who can love without losing themselves, and who can walk boldly in their purpose without being shaken. More than that, these trials deepen your faith. When you are pushed to the edge, you have a choice: to despair or to lean into God's promises. Painful relationships often drive us to our knees, where we discover that our strength is not in human approval, but in divine assurance. They teach us to pray for wisdom, to seek peace beyond understanding, and to trust that God is working even when circumstances seem bleak. This kind of faith is not theoretical, it is forged in the crucible of real suffering and real healing. The faith developed through these experiences is not passive. It equips you to become a beacon for others who are still trapped in toxic relationships or struggling with self-doubt. Your testimony of survival and growth becomes a powerful encouragement, showing that God's grace is sufficient, even in the darkest seasons. The character built through pain becomes a foundation on which you can build a life marked by integrity, compassion, and courage. It's important to remember that refinement takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and it often feels uncomfortable. But every challenge is a stepping stone toward maturity. God isn't just interested in delivering you from pain. He is interested in using that pain to reveal the strength and beauty He has placed within you. He is molding your heart, sharpening your spirit, and preparing you for greater responsibilities and blessing. So while the scars from narcissistic relationships may linger, they serve as reminders of God's refining work in your life. They testify that you survived, that you grew, and that your faith was strengthened. Through these experiences, you become more than a survivor. You become a refined, resilient, and faithful person ready to embrace the abundant life God has planned for you. Choosing to walk away from a narcissistic relationship is one of the most courageous acts you can undertake. But it is far more than just a decision to leave a toxic situation. It is an act of faith and obedience that aligns you with God's greater plan for your freedom and wholeness. Often, when caught in the cycle of manipulation and control, it feels nearly impossible to let go. Fear, guilt, confusion, and hope keep you tethered to a relationship that chips away at your soul. But recognizing when to walk away and having the faith to actually do it is a powerful step toward reclaiming your life. Walking away means trusting that God has something better prepared for you beyond the pain and chaos. It means believing that your worth is not defined by how long you endure mistreatment, but by how boldly you choose to protect your spirit. This act requires surrendering your need to control the outcome and entrusting your future to God's hands. It's a declaration that you will no longer allow fear or manipulation to dictate your story. Instead, you choose to obey the inner voice, calling you to freedom and healing. Many people hesitate to leave because they fear being alone, or they worry about what others might think. But walking away from a narcissistic relationship is not a failure, it is a victory. It is saying no to false love and yes to the authentic love and peace that God offers. It is aligning your life with a vision where you are free to grow, flourish, and pursue the destiny God designed for you. When you walk away, you are not abandoning anyone. You are affirming the truth that some battles are meant to be left behind so you can step into your purpose fully. This decision also shows obedience. God's plans for your life include peace, joy, and abundance, not bondage to pain or toxic cycles. When you obey the prompting to leave, you are honoring God's desire for you to live freely, to be restored, and to be whole. You are partnering with Him to break chains and rewrite your story. Walking away is an act of faith because you might not yet see the full picture, but you trust that God is leading you into something greater than what you are leaving behind. It's important to know that walking away doesn't mean the healing journey ends. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. After you step out, you must continue to nurture your spirit, rebuild your confidence, and allow God to fill the spaces that were once occupied by pain and confusion. This is where true freedom takes root. Not just in leaving, but in embracing God's ongoing work in your heart. Remember, walking away is not weakness. It is strength, guided by faith. It is a bold step toward the freedom God has promised. It is choosing life, healing, and wholeness over bondage. When you walk away from narcissistic pain in obedience to God's plan, you open the door to a future filled with hope, purpose, and peace that no toxic relationship could ever take away. You faced it so you could grow through it. You survived it so you could help someone else rise. And you're healing now because God is preparing you for relationships that honor you, not harm you. Don't look back in bitterness, look forward in wisdom. You're not the same. You're wiser, stronger, and more aware of your worth. That was never just a relationship, it was a revelation. And now that you see clearly, walk boldly. The right people won't drain your soul, they'll water it.